I'm going to show you the best liquidity mining strategies over on the Base network right now. And I'm also going to walk you through the exact process of finding these strategies. All right, we're going to start right here on Defi Llama. Now, Defi Llama is a tool that lets you search through all the opportunities over on decentralized finance. It's going to show a lot more than just liquidity mining strategies, so we're going to have to narrow some things down. All right, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and go to yields on the left, go to pools, and I'm going to click chain. Now, for this tutorial, we're talking about Base. So I'm going to clear. Let's type in Base. Here we go. So we're greeted with a lot of opportunities from Airdrop, Extra Finance, Moonwell, Morpho Blue, and more like Beefy. And if we wanted to filter by specific projects, we could, but in this scenario, I don't need to because I'm just liquidity mining. We want to earn real yield on our assets. Remember, the difference between liquidity mining and yield farming is that liquidity mining is providing liquidity and earning the fees that the traders are paying. Whereas yield farming is when you're getting incentives, and the incentives are what's paying a majority of that DeFi income. So those are two separate things. Just keep in mind, and a lot of the positions over on Airdrop are going to be rather yield farming, but you can also liquidity mine on Airdrop as well when you're not sticking your position, but we'll dive into that later on. I also want to sort by some other things. TVL, let's go 5 million. Reason why is, look, we're tracking 1,000 pools now, but when I put 5 million TVL, it's already at 50. Perfect. Just narrowed down a ton more. Wow, a majority of these are still on Airdrop as well. So next, let's sort by APY. Now, when you sort by APY, you can see stuff that has a high APY that's not just influenced by incentives. So first of all, you're going to notice there's stuff like OVN USD that shows a base APY of 367%. But in this scenario, it's a leveraged position over on a different project, but it's just being executed through Extra Finance. So even though on Extra Finance, you don't get any incentives, this is powered purely by incentives. So we really want to look at the stuff that's over on Uniswap V3, like ETH to USDC, or ETH to Brett. And we also want to be looking at stuff over on Synthetics. As you can see on Synthetics, this has a base APY of 10% at the moment. But look, they also have an additional almost 5% from incentives. So this is like a mix of liquidity mining and yield farming, and I'd say it's a pretty decent strategy. So the majority is powered by real yield, but there's also some incentives to get you to try to deploy your capital. I'm personally going to be paying attention to the Uniswap V3 positions. And if we want to take a look at the Uniswap V3 base positions, we can do that by going over to Metric Finance right here. So let's see. I'm going to go to Uniswap V3 and select my base network. Perfect. So right now it's showing us 345 pools, and we can do that exact TVL filter. In this scenario, hold on, I'm going to do higher than 3 million. Perfect. Let's sort. Here we go. Perfect. So now we're at 51 pools with a 3 million TVL as the minimum. And this does pull directly from the Uniswap official data stream. And for the lower than, I'm going to put 10 million. There we go. Reason doing this is that typically stuff above $10 million doesn't have as high returns. So now we're at about 39 pools. Perfect. So first, I'm going to look at some things that have a very high fees APR. So for example, Toshi to ETH. Now, if Toshi was a coin that you wanted to deploy your capital into, then this could be an option. But if you don't care too much about Toshi, I would not consider this pool, as it doesn't make much sense for you. As in, I just don't think you'd want to provide liquidity for something that you just don't believe in. And it says the yearly APR is over 2,000%. But when you scroll down to volume, look, it started here and then it went down a lot. So it seems like in the beginning of June, there was a lot of volume going on, a lot of trading. And now look how little it is. Look, in July, on June 30th, there was only 21K volume, and back on June 7th, there was 2.3 million, 2.8 million of volume. So that's a huge difference. I'm not someone to tell you what to do with your money, but to me, this is a bit of a red flag that there was such high volume, and now there's like barely anything being traded compared to the beginning. And as you can see, we are not at the peak of distribution. We are not there at all. So we're definitely probably going to get a return lower than this 2,338%. Seems like we could get a pretty high return here nonetheless. So I'm going to bring this current price up a bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and bring this max price up a bit to get this green line over about right here, over this little peak. Let's do it. Let's see. Hold on. Maybe here. So now I'm going to bring the mid price down to about here, and this gives some exposure for Toshi to outperform Ethereum. Maybe I'm going to move it down even a bit more, like here. Now, if you guys want to learn some of these concepts, make sure you drop a like and subscribe with notifications on. Now, diving over here, we probably want to change this current price to where there's some more liquidity. So I'm going to bring it over to where that huge spike is, right here. Perfect. And even in that huge liquidity spike, we're still getting about 70%. It's not too good for the risk that we're taking on. So if we go to a more reasonable price, let's say around here, we're getting about 160%. And if we want to be more active in our position, we can adjust our range just like this. and that's going to give us about a 187% APR. So the importance is over here, there's like very little liquidity, but if the price reverts back over here where there is a lot of liquidity, then guess what? We're not going to get that crazy 1000% return or whatever that was. We're going to get 187%. So it's important to look at both scenarios. And in this scenario, it's not too consistent. And at the 187%, like, yeah, that's amazing. But getting that in something like Toshi that's pretty volatile, I probably personally don't want to deploy my capital into that. So I'm going to go and search through different opportunities. Remember, none of this is financial advice, and always consult with a financial professional first. So one of the positions I'd be taking a look at is ETH to USD BC. This is a pretty good return over on Base Network, and we can use a relatively tight range. So let's adjust this as so. And we can always just use like a tool like Aperture to rebalance this as needed. So I'm going to bring my top price around 3918 and then the minimum price around here. Let's have some room, 3100. This is a pretty tight range and gives us about 60% of Ethereum allocated to this position. And then about 41% of our capital is allocated to USD BC. If you go down to the volume history, you can see it's way more consistent with that last coin. Look, even on the lowest day here, it was still over a mil volume, so that's a really good sign in my eyes. So look, we're already at the top of distribution pretty much, but I'm going to change it a bit to make it even more even, or right on the top. Let's see. Yeah, that's good. So right there, that's about a 25% APR on Ethereum. That's really, really good. And then here, there's also Ethereum to Coinbase Ethereum. Now this one over here is more of like a stable coin position because Coinbase Ethereum tracks the price of Ethereum basically. So the price is going to be very, very similar, but if you zoom out, let's look at 365 days. Here we go. The price is going down. That means it's taking up less and less Coinbase Ethereum to equal 1 Ethereum. That means that the yield you get for staking Ethereum on Coinbase is essentially just compounded back into the price of Ethereum. We're going to go ahead and use a tight range, something like this over here, and then let's see. On the bottom one, where is it? Right here. Now, after a couple minutes of just adjusting my settings a bit and playing around with this pool, I got max price at 0.94 and min price at 0.92. Look, it says 31% yearly APR. And this is just by pairing Ethereum with another derivative of Ethereum. But factor in the 4% that we get from Coinbase Ethereum, we can get this almost a 35% yearly APR. And this is great, and it's on Uniswap, which is a relatively safe platform. And I'm saying this because Uniswap has billions of dollars in TVL. So it seems like this is also a very good yield farming position to include in the portfolio. So this is similar to staked Ethereum, where you're putting your staked Ethereum with your normal Ethereum and you're putting in a liquidity pool and earning that income basically. So for some other positions that are not on Uniswap, we can go over to Extra Finance. Now, Extra Finance, as I mentioned earlier, is purely driven through incentives over on Airdrop. And this is whenever you're looking at base pools, which we're doing in this video. And that's because Airdrop is purely driven on incentives for a lot of these pools. So if we go over to the lens section, here's where we can start to get real yield. So essentially, the way that Extra Finance is able to leverage up on these positions over on Airdrop is by borrowing money. But the thing is, they're not just borrowing money on a line of credit, obviously. They're borrowing money from people that lend on their platform. So over here, you can get roughly 13% APY for lending out USDC basically. And there's also that 0.2% that you get in terms of their extra token, which is also great. This is real yield because people over in the farm section are borrowing that USDC to actually execute leveraged pools basically. So this is liquidity mining in a sense. Keep that in mind. I also think this is great because over on ETH, you can get about almost 3.5% and then almost 3% of their extra token. And then look, over on Ether Finance, you can also get points as well, which just makes this even better. So you get an airdrop qualification and about like 6% overall, which is just great. And then as utilization goes up, you can start to earn more and more in terms of the APY. There's also USD BC, which gives you about 14% over on USDC, which USD BC is a derivative of USDC. There's also Arrow, which is doing about 40%. Oh my gosh. So you can lend out your Arrow over here and get 40% on it. Or there's USD Plus, which is what I'd personally look at, and it's given about 20%. And remember, by holding USD Plus, you can get more USD Plus. And USD Plus is collateralized by stuff like USDT, DAI, as well as USDC. And if you're big on Wells, you could provide liquidity on Wells for 255%. Once again, this is a niched one. If you really like the asset, then provide liquidity for it. But if you don't like the asset, don't provide liquidity for it just because it's doing a high return. And always do your own research into these assets. Keep in mind, there could be smart contract exploits on these platforms. TKN tokens doing about 260% almost. So if you want to provide liquidity for TKN because you believe in the token, this could be a great opportunity for you. One of the reasons why it's 257% is because the utilization is very, very high. Right now, a lot of people people are borrowing this asset, which is leading to that. Now, the risk you also get by lending out is not being able to draw until people repay their asset. Now, the risk that you also get by lending out is not being able to withdraw till people repay their borrow. And that's because people are borrowing this capital. So if utilization is at like 100%, where basically all the borrowed capital is being used on the farm, then you can't withdraw it. You have to wait for the person in the farm to close out their farm position. And that's another risk. You have that liquidity risk in this scenario you can't get out in case you actually need to get out. Another position that's built on top of Airdrop as well as some other base protocols is Dex Finance. So this is essentially a place where you can create managed vaults. And I will say a lot of these are driven by incentives over on Airdrop. Do keep that in mind. If you don't mind incentives and you want to do a little bit of yield farming, then Dex Finance can be a great place. And remember, this is just my personal opinion. Some of these vaults are even doing like 0.5% a day. Wow. Over here, another one, 0.44%. Defi Finance is another place where you can actually find these base positions. Once again, you're going to have a lot of yield farming positions over here. Do keep that in mind. Now, there's this platform called Equalizer, and Beefy supports some of Equalizer's vaults, basically. Equalizer is essentially a decentralized exchange over on the base network. And whenever you trade over here, it's going to route you through, number one, Equalizer, but as well as Odos and OpenOcean. This is just to see what's going to get you the best possible returns. Odos and OpenOcean are aggregators for other decentralized exchanges. Going over to the liquidity section, you can not only earn their native token, you can also earn actual fees. So we want to look over here at the concentrated liquidity. This is what's going to be paying out the highest fees basically compared to the overall reward. We have stuff like ETH to USDC basically. Those are the only two pools over in the concentrated liquidity section. But if you take a look at those over on Beefy, they're doing about 37% APY. Do keep in mind that these vaults are being managed for you basically by Ichi. Ichi is an automatic liquidity manager where they automatically manage the range. This is a good hands-off strategy if you really want to have a hands-off strategy, but do keep in mind there is the risk of being outperformed by impermanent loss or something across those lines. Last thing I want to mention is that if you do have Metrics Pro, you can go to Airdrop on base and you can look at this fees APR. You can change your settings, but look at stuff that has high fees because these fees are the real yield. But if you were to stake it, you'd get these reward APR instead. So think about it like staked is rewards and unstaked is fees. So fees over on Brett ETH, 85%, not too bad. And if we were to take off these constraints right here and just leave like 3 million, we'd get some more pools here as you can see. And if we were to go further and take off that higher than constraint, then we just get even way more pools that you can look through. So check this out. Do keep in mind that you're always going to probably have to adjust your range as long as the calculation range. So like this one, Spec Ethereum, is doing pretty well over on Airdrop. Let's take a look. Look, the volume over the past 30 days is looking really solid. This is definitely a solid pool to look into. So if you guys enjoyed this video where I went through some different opportunities as well as showed some different opportunities, then make sure you like and subscribe with notifications on. I'm trying to grow the channel to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it's so possible. So peace out.